I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when the phone rang. On the other end was Emily, my only daughter. Her voice sounded strange, almost cold. "Mom, tomorrow we're flying to Europe. I've sold the beach house and your car. We needed the money. Goodbye." She hung up without another word. 45 years of raising her, sacrificing for her, and now I was thrown away like trash. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was one thing my beloved daughter didn't know. My name is Rebecca, 71 years old, and until that moment I thought I understood my daughter. 6 months earlier, my husband Robert had passed away from a heart attack, right in the middle of breakfast, just as we had done together for 45 years. That morning he poured milk into his coffee, toasted a few slices of bread, kissed my forehead gently and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were his last words. From that day, I believed Emily was closer to me. She visited 3 times a week, handled the funeral arrangements, took me grocery shopping. She even suggested I go for a full health checkup. "Mom, you're living alone now. You need to take care of yourself." I thought that smile was love, but now I realize it was calculation. The beach house had been our family's haven. Robert and I scraped together enough to buy it when Emily was 15. Every summer, Christmas, birthday was tied to that house. Emily brought boyfriends there, later her husband Edward too. I cooked, cleaned, did the laundry for everyone. It was a tradition. I never imagined Emily only saw it as money. And the car, a worn Chevrolet that Robert cherished like a child. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil regularly, always parked it under the same tree. Emily knew how much that car meant to me. It was the last keepsake of him. Robert's warmth still seemed to linger in its worn fabric seats. When Emily hung up, I sat motionless on the green plastic chair in the waiting room, surrounded by other patients. For the first time in months, I didn't cry. A strange calm filled my heart. I remembered what Robert had told me. 3 days before he died, he had handed me a yellow envelope. "Rebecca, keep this in the drawer. If anything happens, open it when you're ready." I had put it away and forgotten. The doctor called my name, examined me, and said my health was good for my age, just needed rest and a proper diet. I nodded, but my mind was on that envelope. I thought too of Emily's cold voice, and of Edward, who had never liked me, always treated me as a burden. Leaving the clinic, I slowly walked to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Emily, but inside, I smiled. My daughter thought she had taken everything, but she didn't know Robert had always thought ahead. When I got home, I went straight to the bedroom, opened the drawer. The envelope was still there, my name written on it in his familiar hand. My heart pounded. I sat on the bed Robert and I had shared for so many years, took a deep breath, and opened it. Inside were legal papers, deeds, bank statements, and a handwritten letter. Tears ran down my face as I read the familiar handwriting. "My dearest Rebecca, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Forgive me for keeping this from you, but I only wanted you to have no worries. For years, I've invested all our savings in real estate and shares. Beyond the beach house, we own 6 other properties, including the building where Emily and Edward live. We also hold shares in 3 large companies. You are wealthy, my love. You always have been, but now it's proven on paper." My hands trembled as I looked through the documents. There was an apartment downtown, a small seaside hotel, and just as Robert had said, the high-rise where my daughter was living. He had secretly been the owner for 10 years, and I was the sole heir. Robert, a bus driver for 40 years, had been a brilliant investor. He grew every dollar with patience and discretion. In the letter he wrote, I didn't want Emily to know. She would change if she realized the truth. I wanted her to love us for who we were. How ironic, Emily thought. I had nothing, while in reality I had everything. The next morning the phone rang. It was Emily. "Mom, we've transferred the money from selling the house and the car. We left your share in the account. It's not much, but you can live for a few months while you look for something smaller." "My share?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. "Yes, we left you 30%. That's fair, right? We need capital to invest in Europe. Edward has a great opportunity there." 30% of what was already mine. I simply said, "I understand. When are you leaving?" "This afternoon. 6 months, maybe longer." "Don't worry. Later we'll help you find a little apartment more suited to your needs." After hanging up, I laughed for the first time since Robert's death. The absurdity was overwhelming. My daughter had sold my property, given me a fraction, spoke down to me, all to chase some vague European dream. I checked the online account. Yes, the money was there, but far less than the true value. Clearly they had sold in haste. That afternoon, I looked out the window and saw Emily and Edward loading suitcases into a taxi. They laughed, kissed, never once looked back at me. When the car pulled away, I sat at the kitchen table. In front of me were Robert's documents. I knew I had to act. I called James, the lawyer who had once handled Robert's affairs. "Rebecca, it's so good to hear from you. How are you?" "I'm fine, James, but I need to see you urgently. I found some of Robert's papers I don't understand." "Of course. Come to my office tomorrow morning." That night, for the first time in months, I slept deeply. In my dream, I saw Robert, sitting in his armchair reading the paper. When he saw me, he smiled. "It's time, my love. Time for you to stand up on your own." I woke with a clear determination. I would take everything back, but not in the way Emily imagined. The next morning, I put on a wine-colored dress, did my makeup lightly, looked in the mirror, and saw a strong woman. I saw myself again. I left the house, stepping into a new chapter. James greeted me warmly, but when I handed him the stack of documents, his face changed instantly. "Mrs. Rebecca, this is much bigger than I imagined. Robert was truly a remarkable man. According to these papers, you are the legal owner of this entire estate." "I know, James. I've read them. What I need is to know what I can do legally." James explained that every document was valid. I was the rightful owner of everything. He also confirmed what I suspected. Emily's sale of the beach house was completely illegal since she had no rights. "We can recover the house immediately, Mrs. Rebecca, and even press charges against your daughter for fraud." "No, James. I don't want lawsuits. I want to do this differently. I want everything kept quiet for now. Can you help me?" James looked at me curiously, then nodded. "You're my client. What do you need me to do?" "I need you to quietly reclaim the beach house, cancel that illegal sale, and I want you to help me secure full control over all assets, especially the building where Emily lives." "Understood. It will take a few weeks, but it's absolutely possible." "Good. And James, I need everything done discreetly. No one must know I'm behind it." Walking out of James's office, I felt as if I'd awakened from a long sleep. I strolled through the busy downtown streets, watching people, cars, shops. Life moved on, but for me, everything had changed. I had a plan. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. Outwardly, I was just a poor widow, abandoned by her daughter. But in secret, I was a wealthy woman, quietly reclaiming everything. James worked quickly. Every few days he called with updates. During that time, I continued living in my house, while Emily believed I'd soon be forced into some shabby rented room. Every morning I had breakfast alone at the old table where Robert and I had shared so many years, then went for a walk around the neighborhood. The neighbors looked at me with eyes full of pity and curiosity. One afternoon, my longtime neighbor, Aurora, stopped by while I was watering the plants on the porch. "Rebecca, is it true that Emily went to Europe and left you all alone?" "Yes, Aurora. She went with Edward. They have some business plans over there." "And how are you planning to live?" "Everyone thought Robert didn't leave you much. In my mind, I thought, if only you knew. But I just smiled. Don't worry, I'll be fine. If you need anything, I can bring food or help with shopping." "Thank you, but really, I'm fine." Aurora's eyes reminded me of the day of the funeral. That look of sympathy mixed with relief that the tragedy hadn't fallen on her. Those kinds of questions kept repeating everywhere: the butcher, the baker, the shopkeeper. Everyone used that sweet tone reserved for the unfortunate. I nodded, smiled in thanks, but inside I was amused. It was as if I were living two lives. One Wednesday morning, James called. "Mrs. Rebecca, good news. I've canceled the sale of the beach house. The buyer didn't know it was a fraudulent transaction, so they got their money back without any problem. The house is yours again." "Wonderful. And what about the building Emily's living in?" "That one's more complicated. Legally, you've always been the owner through Robert's company, but a few more steps are needed before you have direct control. About 2 more weeks." "Very good. Keep me updated." I sat in the kitchen with my coffee, thinking about Emily. It had been 3 weeks since she left for Europe. No calls, no messages, not even a postcard. For her, I had disappeared from her life the moment she had the money she wanted. But I knew that was about to change. I decided to visit the beach house again. I took the old bus Robert and I had ridden countless times. The house was the same small, painted cream, balcony facing the ocean. The buyer had placed a few potted plants, otherwise everything was intact. I sat across the street, quietly watching for an hour. Memories flooded back. Emily as a little girl running on the sand, Robert grilling fish on the porch, me making salad in the kitchen. Later, Emily bringing her friends, then Edward. All those beautiful memories, and she had turned it into a cold transaction. An elderly man stepped out of the house, saw me, and asked, "Are you all right, ma'am?" "I'm fine, just remembering. I knew the previous owners." "That's a shame. They told us the old lady who owned it was very sick and needed to sell quickly." I just nodded. If only he knew the truth. That night I called James again. "James, I want to get Robert's car back too." "That's harder. The car is in your name, but Emily has a power of attorney you signed after Robert's death." "That can't be. I don't remember." James explained that Emily had once brought me some papers for funeral arrangements. In my grief, I signed without reading. That's when her scheme began. "Is there a way? We can try, but we'd have to prove you signed under deception." "Do it. I want everything back." In the weeks that followed, I lived 2 roles. In the mornings, I was the poor widow. In the afternoons, a businesswoman, studying documents, discussing with James. I slowly realized how smart Robert had been. Every investment was profitable. I also discovered Edward was drowning in debt, even mortgaging their apartment without realizing he never owned it. When the bank found out, he would be ruined. One Friday morning, James called. "All the paperwork is done. You now have full control of all the assets." I also bought back Robert's car, thanks to a friend of mine who had purchased it. He agreed to return it. Excellent, James. Now I need one more thing. Send my daughter a letter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. Silence for a moment. Mrs. Rebecca, are you sure? I'm absolutely sure. She chose to cut me out of her life. Now it's her turn to learn how important I really am. That very afternoon, Aurora ran over. Rebecca, have you heard? Edward is being investigated by the bank. He borrowed money using the apartment as collateral, but turns out the apartment isn't his. Emily knew nothing, and now she probably has to come back to the U.S. to deal with it. Worse, word is there was never any business project in Europe. Edward just wanted to escape his debts. I only smiled slightly. Everything was going as planned. Emily had chosen Edward over me, and now she was about to see his true face. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, gazing at the stars. Robert used to say the stars were the souls of those who had lived fully, always watching over their families from above. I whispered, "Thank you, Robert, for protecting me even after you've gone." The next morning, James called. "Mrs. Rebecca, news. Your daughter just returned. She's at the airport alone. Edward stayed in Europe. Rumor is they had a big fight." "I understand. Did you send the letter?" "I'll send it today. She'll receive it tomorrow." I hung up, sitting quietly in the kitchen, both nervous and eager. After weeks of silent preparation, the time had finally come for the first move. Emily was about to learn her mother was never the helpless victim she thought. Emily returned to her apartment on Tuesday night. I knew this because Aurora, my neighbor with eyes and ears everywhere, told me the next morning. "Rebecca, your daughter came back last night. I saw her dragging a suitcase. She looked awful pale, with dark circles like she'd cried the whole flight. She was alone, completely alone." Aurora added a strange detail. When the doorman asked for her key, Emily didn't have it. She had to ask the manager to open the door with a spare. Clearly, Edward had kept the key, meaning he had decided not to return, or Emily had found something out and run away. Either way, my daughter was back, and very soon she would receive my welcome gift. That afternoon, James called again. "Mrs. Rebecca, the letter was delivered to your daughter an hour ago. The doorman confirmed she took it herself." "Good. How much time does it give her?" 30 days to vacate the apartment, exactly as the law requires." James hesitated. "But are you sure you want to do this?" "She is your daughter." "James, she kicked me out of my own home with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my property without even asking. She treated me like garbage. Now it's time she learns that every action has consequences." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Emily's face when she opened the letter. First confusion, then disbelief, and finally panic. Perhaps she would think it was a scam, but when she checked, she would find it was all legal. The next morning, at exactly 8 a.m., the phone rang. Emily's voice was desperate. Mom, I need to talk right away. I got a strange letter. They say I have to leave the apartment within 30 days. There must be some mistake. Do you know anything about this?" "An eviction notice? That's strange. Who sent it?" "Some company I've never heard of. Let me check. Here, Roberto Investments Incorporated. Do you know this company?" Robert had named the company after himself. How poetic. "No, I've never heard of it." "Are you sure the letter's legitimate?" "That's what I need to find out. Mom, help me. I don't know what to do. Edward left me in Europe, ran off with another woman, and now I come back to this. I don't understand anything." So it was clear Edward had abandoned her maybe when the money ran out, or when he realized the legal trouble in the U.S. was far worse than he thought. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Where are you now? I'm at the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Mom, can I come see you? I don't have anyone else to talk to. A perfect irony. She abandoned me to chase after a man, and only when she lost him did she remember her mother. Of course, honey. Come whenever you want. I'll come right now. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. I needed to prepare for this role. I put on the plainest gray dress, pulled my hair into a neat bun, and practiced the face of a worried but helpless mother. An hour later, Emily stood at my door. When I opened it, I was shocked by how worn out she looked, thin, swollen eyes, her expensive clothes now wrinkled. "Mom," she whispered, for a second looking like she would hug me, but then stopped short. "Come in, dear. Want some coffee?" Yes. We sat in the kitchen, the same place where weeks before I had read Robert's documents. Emily sat there, small and fragile, like a little girl telling me she'd failed a test. "Mom, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. I said terrible things to you. Now I don't have anyone left." "That's in the past, dear." "No, it's not. I treated you horribly. And now I have nothing." Her voice broke. I asked, "And Edward?" "He left me for a waitress in Paris, only 25 years. Old. There was never any business project. It was all lies. He used the money from selling your house to play games and to escape his debts." "Debts?" "Yes, Mom. A lot. He borrowed everywhere, used the apartment as collateral, but turns out he wasn't even the owner. Now the banks are coming after me. They say because we were married, I'm responsible too. Mom, I'm desperate. I don't have money, I don't have a job, I don't have a place to live. Can I stay with you for a while?" This was the question I had been waiting for. After everything, now she begged for shelter from the poor mother she once cast aside. "Of course, dear. This will always be your home." Emily froze, surprised I agreed so easily. She burst into tears and hugged me, but this time I didn't hug back with unconditional love. I hugged with calculation. The next day, she arrived with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, everything left of her life. I watched her move into her old teenage room, seeing the shame in her every gesture. From a luxury apartment, now back to her childhood bedroom. "Mom, I found this in Edward's things," she said, handing me a small envelope. "It has your name on it. I think it's from Dad." My heart pounded, but I kept calm. Sure enough, Robert's familiar handwriting was on the envelope. But this one was different, smaller, newer. Perhaps Edward had found it among Robert's things and forgot to give it to me. I opened it right in front of Emily. Inside was a short note and a small key. The note read, "Rebecca, if you're reading this letter after already receiving the main envelope, it means our daughter is in trouble. This key opens safety deposit box number 247 at Central Bank, downtown branch. Inside, you'll find something that can help you help her, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Robert." Emily read along, her eyes wide. A safety deposit box? I never knew Dad had. We have to check it, Mom. There might be something important." I pretended to hesitate. "I'm not sure, honey. Maybe we should leave it be." "But, Mom, there could be something in there that will save us." I could hear the desperation in her voice. Emily was clinging to any spark of hope. And I would let her cling a little longer before showing her the whole truth. "All right," I said after a calculated pause. "We can go tomorrow." That night, Emily and I had dinner together for the first time in months. She tried to cook, as if to be helpful, but the meal tasted of guilt and despair. She told me more details about what had happened in Europe, and each story was worse than the last. Edward lied to me about everything, Mom. Not just business, but the debts. I thought he only owed a little, but it turns out he owes more than $100,000. Worse, he used my name for some loans. I don't know how he did it. He must have forged my signature. When we got married, I gave him some papers to handle bank accounts. I never thought he'd use them like this. Do you have any way to prove you didn't know? I asked. I don't know. Everything's a mess. The banks say since we were married, I'm responsible too. And the divorce? I don't even know where Edward is. He's completely vanished. His phone's off, no email replies. It's like he disappeared from the world. Perfect. Edward had fled like the rat he always was, leaving Emily to face the consequences alone. In a way, he had done me a favor. Now my daughter was feeling exactly what I had felt when she abandoned me, the betrayal of someone you trusted completely. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't either, Mom. I thought he loved me, that we'd build something together, but I was just a tool for him to get money and papers. Emily began to cry again. How could I? I'd be so stupid. How did I not see what he really was? I wanted to tell her I had seen the signs from the start, that I had warned her Edward was never trustworthy. But that would ruin the image of the gentle, helpless mother I was portraying. Love blinds us sometimes, honey. Don't blame yourself. But Mom, I didn't just ruin my life. I ruined yours too. I treated you horribly, took your house, your car, sold all your things, all to give it to a man who abandoned me the first chance he got. I destroyed everything Dad left for you. Now we're just two poor women struggling to survive. If only she knew, I thought to myself. If only she knew that right now I was richer than she could imagine, that I owned the very building she once lived in, that I could erase her debts with a single phone call, but not yet. The next day we went to the bank. Emily was nervous but hopeful. I continued my act as the confused widow who knew little about finances. The bank clerk checked my ID and opened safety deposit box number 247. Inside were velvet cases full of jewelry, rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. Some pieces I recognized as Robert's family heirlooms. Others were completely new things he must have bought later. There was also a letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate value. Emily gasped. Mom, this must be worth a fortune. You think so? Look at this emerald and this pearl necklace. Dad kept a treasure here. According to Robert's letter, the jewelry was worth about $200,000. Significant, but nothing compared to the rest of my estate. It was like finding loose change under the couch when you already had millions in the bank. What should we do with this, Mom? I don't know, dear. These are family keepsakes. But Mom, if we sell some, you could get the beach house back, and I could pay off some of Edward's debts. There it was again. Even when faced with something valuable, Emily's first reaction was to think of using it to fix Edward's mess. She hadn't learned anything yet. Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance to pay off Edward's debts? Mom, what other choice do I have? If I don't pay, the banks will take everything. And technically, I don't own anything at all. I only told her to think carefully, but Emily had already made up her mind. She spread all the jewelry across the kitchen table, counting each piece, weighing which ones to sell and which to keep. Painfully, I had to watch her turn her father's memories into numbers. Mom, this can cover the most urgent debts. Not all of it, but at least some. And after that, I'll find a job, rebuild my life. Maybe rent a small, cheap room. You don't have to go anywhere. You can stay here as long as you want. No, Mom. I've troubled you enough. Besides, you need money too. You can't keep supporting me forever. How amusing it was to see Emily believe I was poor, that I couldn't provide for both of us. In reality, just the assets in my name alone were enough to buy the whole neighborhood. That afternoon, James called. "Mrs. Rebecca, I have the full report on Edward's debts. It's worse than I thought. He owes over $200,000 to several banks, not to mention loan sharks. Even worse, he forged your daughter's signature on some of the loans. So Emily will be held responsible. Yes, legally she will. But if we can prove she was deceived, we could get her released. It'll take time and be expensive, around $50,000 in legal fees, and still not guaranteed. What if we just paid everything off? That would be the fastest. But she doesn't have the money. James, prepare all the necessary paperwork to clear my daughter's debt. But do not tell her anything. I'll handle it." "You mean you'll pay?" "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my child. But it has to be done the right way." I hung up the phone and walked into the living room. Emily was sitting in front of the jewelry, her eyes distant, sorrowful. "What are you thinking about, Emily?" "About Dad. If he saw me like this now, he'd be so disappointed. He always taught me to be responsible, to value family, and I abandoned you for a liar, sold all our memories for money. I ruined everything." For the first time since she came back, I heard real regret in her voice. It wasn't just complaining over loss anymore, but a recognition that she had been morally wrong. "Everyone makes mistakes, sweetheart. What matters is what we learn." But how do I learn from this? How do I make it right? Here it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. Emily was finally ready to face the truth about her actions. But I couldn't play my final card yet. She needed to hit rock bottom first. In the days that followed, Emily decided to sell most of the jewelry, keeping only the engagement ring Robert once gave me and a small necklace from her grandmother. I watched her run from store to store, asking prices, haggling, painful but necessary. "Mom, I got $180,000, she announced one afternoon, laying a stack of cash on the table. "Less than I thought, but enough to cover the urgent debts. Are you sure you want to do this? There's no other way. If not, they'll seize everything, even this house." I smiled to myself. She was worried about losing the house I owned, selling her father's keepsakes to pay off the debts of the man who abandoned her, using money from the very legacy of the man who had already built enough wealth to save her. The irony was almost poetic. That evening, as Emily sorted through the debt papers on the table, I got another call from James. "Mrs. Rebecca, important news. We've tracked Edward down. He's in Paris. And here's the best part. He's faking a marriage with that young woman to gain residency. We also have evidence he deliberately forged Emily's signature to flee the U.S. That means we can prove fraud. If so, Emily will be completely free of the debts." Perfect. I now had a way to save Emily without her ever knowing I was behind it. "James, start the process immediately. But remember, don't tell her anything. I want everything completed before she finds out. I won't give her false hope." "Understood. It'll take 3 to 4 weeks." I hung up. Emily looked at me curiously. "Who was that, Mom?" "Oh, just an old lady who dialed the wrong number." Lying had become as easy to me as breathing. With each passing day, I grew more accustomed to living my double life. On one hand, I was the poor, abandoned mother, exactly what Emily believed. On the other, I was a wealthy woman, quietly arranging everything to both rescue her and teach her a lesson she would never forget. The next 2 weeks, I watched Emily struggle with choices she had never faced in her entire life, stretching every dollar for food, negotiating with creditors, searching for jobs with a ruined credit record. It was a brutal lesson, but one she needed. "Mom, I went to 3 interviews today," she said, coming home with swollen feet and a tired face. 2 turned me down because of my legal troubles. The other offered only part-time cleaning offices at night. "Will you take it?" I asked. "I don't have a choice. The pay is low, but better than nothing. At night I'll work. During the day I'll keep looking." Watching my daughter, who had lived comfortably for over 40 years, now about to hold a mop in an office, my heart ached. But I also felt pride she was finally learning to stand on her own. "Are you sure you can handle such hard work?" "I have to learn. I can't keep being your burden. You've already let me live here rent-free. That's more than enough." "This is your home, Emily." "No, Mom. This is your home. I'm just staying here. But I won't take advantage of your kindness forever." One evening, while Emily was out on her first shift, Aurora dropped by. We sat in the kitchen, sipping tea and looking at the family photos on the wall. "Rebecca, let me ask you honestly, did you know Emily would come back in this condition?" "What do you mean?" "When she left, she was so arrogant, always talking about the luxurious life in Europe, about Edward's success. And now she's back with nothing, cleaning offices, living off you. Life turns around, Aurora. But I can see she's different. Not just sad, but humble, like she's actually learned something." Aurora was always perceptive. "What do you think she's learned?" I asked. "She's learned the value of what she once took for granted, having a mother who loves her unconditionally." Then Aurora looked at me and whispered, "Rebecca, when Emily left you, everyone thought you'd never forgive her. But now you've taken her in again. Not every mother could do that. If only Aurora knew the truth, that I could erase all of Emily's problems in an instant, but I chose to let her struggle a little longer so the lesson would sink deep." "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" "I do, but Emily needs to understand she can't just need you when she's desperate. She has to respect you as the strong woman who built this whole life." Aurora struck right at the heart of it. Yes, I didn't want Emily to return out of despair, but out of genuine love and respect. That night, Emily came home exhausted, but with a spark of pride in her eyes. She had earned her first dollar through her own effort. "How was the first day?" "Hard, but not as bad as I thought. There's a woman named Carmen, 60 years old, who's been there 20 years. She showed me how to work faster and more efficiently. She told me her husband left her, and she raised 3 kids on her own with this job. It's not a dream, but it gave her independence and dignity." Sounds like a very wise woman. She is. She said there are 2 kinds of people in this job: those who never had a chance and those who destroyed the chances they once had. Then she asked me which kind I was. I told her the truth. I once had everything: a loving family, a home, an inheritance, but I ruined it all because I trusted a man who wasn't worth it. I stayed silent. Emily took a sip of water, then looked at me. "Mom, these have been the hardest days of my life, but also the most important. Now I understand that what really matters isn't money or a nice house, but having someone who loves you and stays when everything else falls apart. You had every right to hate me, to abandon me, but you still opened your arms." Her voice broke. "Have you forgiven me, Mom?" "I already have, Emily. But you have to learn to forgive yourself and prove that you've truly changed." The next morning, James called. "Mrs. Rebecca, I have wonderful news. The legal process is nearly finished, and we can free your daughter from all of Edward's debts." The time had come. After weeks of letting Emily taste misery, this was the moment for her to know the truth. "James, Arrange a meeting. That Friday, I took Emily to James's office. I only told her that a lawyer might be able to help her. She was nervous about not having money, but I reassured her. James welcomed us with a professional smile. Thank you both for coming. First, Miss Emily, please look at this file. Emily opened it, her expression shifting from confusion to astonishment. It says here Edward forged my signature. There's proof of fraud. That means I'm not responsible for the debt. That's correct, James confirmed. We've investigated for weeks and gathered enough evidence to prove you were a victim. But who paid for all this? I don't have any money. James looked at me. I took a deep breath. It was time to remove the mask. Emily, there's something you don't know. Your father left me far more than you ever imagined. James handed over another file. Bank accounts, property deeds, investment certificates. Everything Robert had built over his lifetime. Emily read, her face shifting from stunned to shocked to finally silent. Mom, you own the whole building where I used to live? And all these other properties? Yes. So, when I sold the beach house, it was actually yours all along, and you already got it back? That's right. Emily's voice trembled. How long have you known? Since the day you called me from the doctor's office. You knew when I came back from Europe begging for help? When I cried every night? I knew. A heavy silence filled the room. Emily closed the file and looked straight at me. Why, Mom? Why did you let me suffer when you could have saved me? I had been waiting for this question for weeks. Because you needed to learn a lesson no other way could teach. You had to understand the value of what you lost: family, respect, responsibility. When you abandoned me, you didn't just take money. You took dignity, love, and trust. Emily cried, but this time they weren't tears of self-pity. They were tears of realization. I left you when you needed me most. I treated you like garbage, and yet you still saved me. I saved you, but not by handing you money to make the same mistakes again. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom, so you could learn how to stand up on your own. James stepped in. Miss Emily, your mother paid all the legal fees to free you from Edward's debts. She also recovered every asset that had been sold illegally. You have no more legal troubles. Emily lifted her head, her voice breaking. And the cleaning job. You can quit if you want, I said. But I hope you don't. That job is teaching you something money never could: the value of your own effort, the dignity in honest work, and the meaning of every dollar earned by your own hands. Emily wiped her tears, looking at me with a gaze I hadn't seen in years, one filled with respect. It wasn't the look of a daughter begging her mother for rescue anymore, but the look of a grown woman toward another woman, full of reverence. Do you forgive me, Mom? Emily asked. I forgave you long ago, sweetheart. The real question is whether you can forgive yourself. I don't know. I've done things that can't be forgiven. Everyone makes mistakes, Emily. What matters is what we do after we realize them. Attorney George left us alone in his office for a few minutes. Mother and daughter sat in silence, trying to process everything that had just happened. Mom, I want you to know something, Emily finally said. Even if you didn't have all this money, even if you really were just a poor widow like I thought, I still would have learned this lesson. What lesson? I asked. That nothing is more valuable than having someone who loves you unconditionally. These past weeks, the only thing that kept me standing was knowing I still had a home with you. No matter how badly I ruined my life, you were still my mother. That will never change, Emily. I know, but now I also know I can't take that love for granted anymore. I have to earn it every day with respect, gratitude, and action, not just words. We left George's office with a completely new relationship. We were no longer just mother and daughter bound by blood, but two grown women who chose to remain together after surviving the hardest trial imaginable. The following weeks were a time of rebuilding, though not in the way Emily once expected. Even though she now knew I had enough resources to fix everything, she chose to continue her night cleaning job. "Mom, I need to finish what I started," Emily said one afternoon as she prepared for work. "I can't just go back to an easy life like before, pretending nothing ever happened." "Are you sure? You don't need to punish yourself forever." "This isn't punishment. It's my way of remembering who I was and who I want to become from now on." I watched my daughter put on her work uniform, something unimaginable months ago when she was living in a luxury apartment with Edward. But now, in her posture and eyes, there was something different, a pride found in honest labor. That afternoon, our longtime neighbor Aurora came by for tea. She looked at me intently and said, "Rebecca, there are strange rumors in the neighborhood." "What kind of rumors?" I asked. "People are saying you two aren't as poor as everyone thought." They saw Emily coming out of a fancy law office downtown, then paying off all her debts at the bank. Some even say you got back the beach house and somehow solved all of Emily's legal troubles. That costs a lot of money, Rebecca. Aurora knew me too well to let me keep lying. I invited her to sit down, poured more tea, and sighed. "Richard left me more than anyone ever knew, Aurora. Much more." "How much more?" "Enough so that Emily and I will never have to worry about money again." Aurora sat in silence for a long moment, then asked, "Then why pretend to be poor all this time?" I told her everything: Emily's cold phone call, my silent plan for revenge, the weeks I watched her hit rock bottom, and finally the reveal at George's office. Aurora looked at me, her face showing a mix of admiration and astonishment. "Rebecca, what you did was both cruel and wise. Cruel, because you let your daughter suffer when you could have saved her instantly, but also wise, because I understand why you did it. Emily needed to relearn the true value of what she had lost." I nodded. "If I had given her money right then, what lesson would she have learned, besides always expecting someone to rescue her?" Aurora smiled softly. "And now you see, don't you? She has learned the lesson. Emily knows she could live comfortably, but still chooses to work. She could move out, but wants to stay with you. She no longer thinks only of herself, but is using her savings to help other women." Indeed, Emily had changed. The daughter who once chased after luxury was now using her modest wages from cleaning to help a coworker pay for daycare. That night, when Emily came home, she said, "Mom, I want you to know I've decided to stay, but not as a daughter coming back to freeload. I'll stay as a grown woman choosing to live with her mother. I'll share expenses, help take care of this house, and protect this relationship as a partnership between two independent women." I was choked with emotion. "You don't have to do that, Emily." "I do, Mom. Before, I took your love and care for granted. Now I know I have to honor and protect it with my actions." Then Emily told me she wanted to keep studying, to pursue social work. "I've seen too many people with no one to help them, Mom. I want to be someone they can rely on." That was the moment I knew my plan had worked. Emily had not only learned to appreciate what she had, but also how to turn it into strength to help others. Later, when George informed us that Edward had been arrested in France for a fraudulent marriage and was facing deportation, Emily only sighed. "I don't care anymore. If it weren't for his betrayal, I never would have hit rock bottom and never would have learned to value what I have today." That night, for the first time in months, I slept in absolute peace. My plan had succeeded not to destroy, but to rebirth. 6 months later, Emily completed her program with excellent grades. I established a foundation to support women facing abuse and financial hardship. Emily worked in social services, the pay not high, but she had learned to live simply and find happiness. One morning, she walked into the kitchen with an envelope. "Mom, I got accepted into the master's program, but don't worry, I'll pay for it with my own savings." "Are you sure?" "We can afford it. I need to do this myself." That's who I am now. Aurora, my friend of decades, came by and said, "Rebecca, I once thought you were too harsh with Emily, but now I think you're the wisest mother I've ever known." Looking at Emily studying in the living room, I knew Aurora was right. Emily was no longer the woman who chased after glitter. She now carried an inner calm and a firm belief in her own worth. And that evening, on the porch under the sunset, I whispered to Richard, "We did it. She finally understands what truly matters." In my heart, it felt as though he was smiling back. "I always knew you two would." Would I answer his letter? No. Not because I still held resentment, but because there was nothing left to say. The Emily who once married him no longer existed. The woman sitting before me now was grown, strong, and had nothing left to do with him. I was deeply moved by the maturity in my daughter's voice. She was no longer the child begging for her mother's rescue, but a woman who had hit rock bottom and risen again, finding strength within herself. "You know what, Mom," Emily said. "This whole experience taught me something." "What's that, honey?" "That true love isn't what tells you what you want to hear. True love teaches you what you need to learn, even when it hurts." Eduardo always told me sweet things, made me feel special, convinced me I deserved a life of luxury without effort. But you were different. You taught me that real wealth comes from work, from respect, and from genuine relationships. That night, when Emily went back to her room to study, I sat alone on the porch, gazing at the stars and thinking of Richard. I had promised to take care of our daughter, and finally I felt I had kept that promise in the right way. I hadn't cared for her by giving her money the moment she needed it, but by teaching her to care for herself. I hadn't saved her by erasing her troubles, but by letting her learn to solve them. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned to visit the beach house for the first time since I reclaimed it. Until then, Emily had always refused, saying she needed time to process everything. "Are you ready?" I asked as we got into the car. "I think so." The drive was quiet but comfortable. When we arrived, Emily sat in the car a while longer, staring at the house where we had spent so many joyful summers. "It looks exactly the same," she whispered. "Some things don't change, but you're not the same person who once sold this house." We walked in. The house was clean and orderly, just as Richard and I had kept it. Emily moved through each room, touching the furniture, looking at the family photos on the walls. "Mom, I want to apologize." "You already did." "No, this time I want to apologize for selling this house. Not just for selling it, but for belittling all our memories, reducing everything to a transaction." I held her hand. "That's in the past. This house is 40 years of summers, birthdays, Christmases. Your father built this porch with his own hands. I planted that garden. You learned to swim at the beach out front. A whole lifetime of memories lives here." Emily sat on the couch where Richard used to read the Sunday paper. "What hurts most is, when I sold it, I felt nothing. To me then it was just a house. But now, being here, I can feel Dad everywhere. His laughter, the smell of morning coffee, his reading glasses on the table. He never really left. Did he, Mom?" No, sweetheart. And I believe he's very proud of us. We spent the whole day there, cooking, cleaning, fixing little things. It felt like a ritual of reconnection, not only with the house, but with the values it represented. As the sun set, we sat on the porch Richard had built, looking out at the sea. Mom, I have a proposal. What is it? I want to turn this house into a shelter for women escaping domestic violence. A place where they can stay while rebuilding their lives. The proposal brought tears to my eyes. Richard would have loved the idea. That's a wonderful idea, Emily. We can use the foundation funds to maintain it, and you can help through your social work. But are you sure, Mom? This was once our family refuge. The best refuges are the ones we share, sweetheart. Your father always said a house doesn't truly become a home until it opens its doors to those in need. We returned home with a new project, with a renewed bond, not just as mother and daughter tied by blood, but as two women who chose to walk together, building a life based on love, respect, and shared purpose. That night, before I fell asleep, I whispered to Richard, "We did it, my love." She finally understands what matters most. And for the first time since the day he passed, I felt as if he were answering me. I always knew the two of you would make it. You're both much stronger than you think. Justice had finally arrived, not as revenge, but as education, not as punishment, but as transformation. And in the end, the two of us gained something far more valuable than money, an authentic, unshakable bond that no storm in the future could ever destroy. Perhaps what touches us most in this story isn't the numbers tied to wealth, nor just the betrayal or the loss, but the journey of a mother and daughter finding each other again, rediscovering the respect and love they once thought was gone. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't in the words, but in giving each other the chance to grow and change. And maybe all of us have faced a moment like that when family, love, or trust is tested to the breaking point. But if we're willing to look back and learn from the wounds, then what once seemed shattered can become the foundation for a stronger, more resilient life. What do you think? In a family, what matters more, material wealth, or the wealth found in love and respect? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to keep reflecting together through everyday stories filled with meaning, don't forget to follow so you won't miss the next chapter of our journey.